welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla if you're new here, and as you can tell from the title of this video, I am going to be talking about everything that happened at Fan Expo Canada 2025. So if you're interested, just keep watching. But I've got my laptop here and I'm going to be talking to you guys about everything from convention details, venue, my expenses and earnings, the audience turnout, spending habits of customers, logistics because I did travel to this event, theft, and at the end of all of this, would I go back again? Alright, so if you guys haven't checked out my Fan Expo Canada video already on my channel, I'll link it up above in the description down below, and you can watch that video to see my personal experience for everything that took place, and this video is more of a recap talking about the nitty-gritty details. So let's start off with convention details. If you aren't new at this convention, it is Fan Expo Canada, which is the largest Fan Expo event in the country. There are Fan Expo Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto. I believe those are the only ones. This one took place 4 days this year from August 21st to 24th at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. This convention center is huge. There is a north and a south building, and according to the website, between all of these buildings, there were approximately 1,000 plus exhibitors between Artist Alley and the exhibitor hall, which to me is absolutely crazy. I typically just do the Calgary and Edmonton Fan Expo events, which are on a whole different scale compared to Fan Expo Canada. One thing that is notable is this year for 2025, apparently they had expanded Artist Alley, which meant that they allowed, I believe, 200 or more vendors were in this hall. I've heard mixed reviews about this. Of course, I've heard from people who are new and also from people who are more seasoned and have been doing this for 5-10 years. I guess for me, from my perspective, it is nice that they expanded Artist Alley because it gave the opportunity to vend for more people like myself who are just entering the scene. But I also heard from people who have been doing conventions for a while, they actually were not happy about Artist Alley expanding because that generally leaves less money for people to spend around. For logistics issues, I'll put a screenshot of the floor map here, and as you can tell, there are a ton of booths. My booth was way at the back in row C. It was alphabetical, so I believe it went from A all the way to X at least, but I apparently was in the original Artist Alley area, and then the bottom section is where they expanded. Now we know about the nitty-gritty details about the convention, let's talk more about the venue at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. So right off the bat, I think that this venue location was nice because first off, it's connected to the main Union Station, which is the main train station for downtown Toronto. And so I actually was able to take the UP Express train directly from the airport right to the convention center, and that honestly saved me so much time, energy, and also money because I didn't have to Uber from the train station to another convention center. The venue was so large though that I personally found it very difficult for me to navigate. I was traveling by myself, so imagine me, I'm not really that big in stature, and I had multiple check-in luggages that were 50 pounds each. You know, I'm pulling this on uneven floor, up and down, and on carpet as well. So I honestly was so exhausted by the time I even found my table. This place, you had to go down 3 to 4 escalators just to get down to the Artist Alley area. It wasn't like a main floor convention center. And so I honestly found that kind of difficult because there was a huge backup for the elevators because people who had like dollies or trolleys, wagons, luggages, everyone was lining up for the elevators, and of course that's going to take time for people to load in, load out, wait for the elevators, etc. So honestly what I did was I just took one check-in luggage at a time down the escalators, and there were security guards at each escalator checking people's badges, so honestly just let them watch my luggages for the quick minute or two. But I took it one at a time down the escalator, and that was faster than waiting in line for the elevator. I don't know if that's allowed, but that's what I did anyways, and no one really said anything. Also, because this Artist Alley area and exhibitor area was down below, it made it so difficult for traffic flow to get in and out of this event. I think I timed it one night and it took me 40 minutes to leave my table and to get out onto the main floor. So yeah, I would say plan for about 30 to 40 minutes every day just to get in and out due to the sheer amount of people coming in and out of this building. The building itself was fine. The lighting was decent. Like, I mean, you can see it wasn't dark in there, and the AC temperature was fine given the amount of people. so I didn't have any complaints on that part. Alright, this part is probably what most people are excited about, which are expenses and earnings. So let's start off with expenses first because there are a lot to go through. So first off, table fee. This was the highest table fee that I've ever paid for any market, any convention, but it was a 4-day event, so you do have to keep that in mind. But it was $690 Canadian plus 13% tax, so it actually was a huge expense leading up to this event, and I was pretty nervous about that because, you know, at the end of the day, you are taking a risk by paying these expenses up front and hoping to make that back and also profit as well. So now into the flight details. So I'm not local to Toronto. I'm from Calgary, which is about a 4-hour flight away from Toronto. However, during this time, the flights for Air Canada, the flight attendants had a strike. It was nationwide, so all flights were canceled, and I had to book a last-minute flight through WestJet, which is another courier, and I had to pay $1,100 for a last-minute flight. Usually how flights work is as soon as you get closer to the flight date, you know, the prices skyrocket. So this was a huge unexpected expense for me. My original flight, I believe, was like $550, so basically doubled in price, but what could you do, right? I really had to make it to this event. I didn't have anyone local that could do it for me, and I already paid to vend, so yeah. Food cost for me was pretty minimal. I mean, I'm a small person, I don't eat a lot, and typically what I do is I would order one meal at a restaurant, and then I usually have leftovers and I eat that for the next meal. And I was staying with a friend, so we kind of went out to eat for every meal, but my costs were still pretty low. Speaking of my friend, I was so lucky that I had a friend living in Toronto. I did go to university there, so it was one of my ex-classmates, but they let me stay at their house for the 5 days that I was there, and so hotel fees were $0. The only thing is he did live pretty far from the convention center, so I had to take the train about 1 hour every way to get there, but at the end of the day, I think it's still worth it because hotel prices in downtown Toronto can be $300 to $400 per night. And I don't really want to share a room if I don't have to. My friend had a spare bedroom, so I was perfectly fine staying with him. Transportation costs. So I did have to take the train to my friend's house and to the convention center every day. And I also had to take the train from the airport to the convention center and then the convention center back to the airport going home. So transportation came out to about $55-ish because, yeah, my expenses were pretty low. The train's like $3 one way, so I didn't have to Uber or anything, which was really nice. So if we were to kind of bucket all of my expenses, let's just round it to about $2,000 Canadian for table fee, flight, hotel, and transportation and food. So $2,000 upfront is kind of a lot for a small business. This was my first time attending this event as well, so I don't really know what to expect going into it, right? I don't know if I'm going to make my money back or if I'm not. You just have to take a risk, especially with the economy these days. People are spending less as a trend, so you do have to keep that in mind when you're forking up a lot of money upfront. In terms of earnings, let's just say that this was my highest earnings event ever that my small business has ever had, and I'm so incredibly grateful for people showing up for me and my business. And I was also very lucky that a lot of people didn't know about me because this was my first time vending in Toronto, so I did kind of have that like newbie, I guess, like bump in pay because people are probably going to buy something when they see it once, but if they see it over and over, time and time again, they might not buy from you every time. So I kind of attribute that to my high earnings. So next up, we're talking about the audience turnout. So according to the Fan Expo Canada website, there were over 135,000 attendees, which is a huge amount of people for a 4-day event. As I mentioned before, this was the largest artist alley that I've ever been to, and so I didn't really know what to expect, but from my colleagues, I was told to expect chaos, and they weren't wrong. Basically, I noticed that at some points, the aisles aisles got so crowded, like it was shoulder to shoulder with people just crawling through, that people weren't even bothering to stop and look at your stuff. They would just keep walking because they wanted to get out of there, or they physically couldn't stop because there were people behind them that were trying to get through. So that was a downside about having a busy convention. As well as a vendor myself, I can't really talk to people that long because there's just so many people coming from the left and right side that you can't really have those like long, genuine conversations with people that I would at a smaller event. So that is something that I missed at Fan Expo that I wish that I got to do more of. That said, I met so many people who were able to see my small business for the first time, and they were so happy to see a candle vendor in Artist Alley, and that honestly made me so happy. A lot of times I kind of have imposter syndrome when I go to these Artist Alley events because everyone is so talented, they're more experienced than me, and there are a lot of print vendors as well. So someone who doesn't really fall into that general niche, I wasn't sure how I would be accepted at Fan Expo Canada, but it was a very warm welcome, and I'm so grateful for that. I also want to say that I met so many subscribers at this event as well, and because this was my first Toronto event, it was so nice meeting everyone for the first time. So if you were able to come out to this event and say hello to me and stop by, I just want to say thank you so much, and it was honestly so fun meeting everyone. It was kind of funny because, I don't know, it's I guess a little bit awkward having this like relationship with you guys because I don't really know what you look like, but you know what I look like. So when people would come to my table, they'd be like, oh my gosh, how was your flight, blah, blah. And then sometimes I forget that you guys know that about me. And the lady who was tabling next to me, she like kept looking over because people would say like, oh my god, I watch your YouTube videos. And I think she was like kind of a little curious about me, but she didn't really mention anything. Demographic wise for this event, I would say it was like pretty wide. There were like pretty much everyone there. There were families there with their young kids. There were high school people, uni people, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, kind of everything. And I think that's because of the sheer amount of people. There's just obviously going to be a wide turnout of demographic. So yeah, that was nice because I feel like everyone kind of likes candles, not gonna lie. So many kids wanted to smell the candles. A lot of uni people bought candles for like studying. Also people in their like 20s and 30s who just got their first apartment, they were looking for decor. So I felt like candles actually was pretty good fit for this Artist Alley in particular. Okay, this is a new kind of category that I added to my market recaps, and it is spending habits. I kind of wanted to touch on this because I did have some observations seeing that I've done over 100 pop-up markets, and I noticed at Fan Expo Canada in particular, a lot of people purchased one candle versus my promotion that is buy 3 get the 4th one free. So this overall led to a lower average sale price, but I did have more sale numbers, if that makes sense. But this is likely due to people having to spread out their money over like 1,000 artists. If you had versus like 40 artists at one event versus 1,000, people are probably going to spend less at Fan Expo Canada per booth because there's just so many other people that they want to see and that they want to support. So it's easier for them to purchase like a $4 sticker from like 5 vendors versus buying like one air freshener, one wax melt type of thing, right? Lots of vendors told me that this year their earnings were less than last year and previous years, which makes sense since they did expand the Artist Alley by a couple hundred vendors. And so a lot of repeat vendors were not happy about that, and I totally understand as well. But we also need to take into account the economy as well. I saw a video posted on Instagram from a local Canadian vendor, and they were saying that their earnings were down more than 50% from last year, which is obviously devastating and heartbreaking. As a small business, it's so hard to kind of gauge how much you're going to make month to month, but to be down by 50% is pretty shocking, and that honestly made me a little bit worried in terms of like rebooking this event because yeah, you just really can't predict what it's going to be like year to year. Moving on to logistics, this is also a new category, but for me this was pretty much my first big travel event. Flying across the country with hundreds of candles is like not possible for just one person. So candles are pretty big and bulky. Each candle for me is half a pound just for one, and they're pretty big as well. So it's not like you can fit a ton in your check-in luggage, and also you're restricted by weight anyways because check-in luggages max out at 50 pounds. So I was lucky enough that I was able to ship some boxes to my friend's apartment because I was staying with him. So, you know, in theory, this was a good idea, but in reality, it was actually a nightmare. I shipped my stuff really early, so it arrived to Toronto on Monday. The convention starts on Thursday, so I had a 4-day buffer. My friend works from home and he's home all the time, so he was waiting for my parcel to arrive. We were tracking it together. And then suddenly, the day of delivery, the note card is posted on his apartment door saying that they attempted delivery, but he wasn't home. Clearly this was a lie because my friend was home, he didn't hear the doorbell or anything. And I thought that deliveries are usually attempted for 3 times. At least that's how it is in Calgary. Maybe Toronto is different. But apparently they only attempt delivery once, and if you don't pick it up the first time, you have to drive to their warehouse and pick up your parcel. The only issue is the warehouse is like a 45-minute drive from my friend's apartment. It wasn't even in Toronto, it was in Etobicoke, which is a neighboring city. So that's pretty crazy. My friend was also working, so it's not like I can tell him like, hey, stop what you're doing and go pick up my parcel. I was willing to pick it up myself, but because I shipped it to him, it was in his name and the company wouldn't let me pick it up myself even though I was the sender. So this caused a huge fiasco. I was on hold with chat for like hours every day. I tried to pay them to redeliver a second time on Tuesday. That didn't happen. They just stole my money. I'm still waiting for a chargeback to get that money back. But basically, my friend had to take time off work, Uber to the center, and then pick up my parcel for me. When he got there, the worker literally told him he couldn't pick up my box and that it wasn't there. And I literally had to get on the phone and be like, you guys told me my parcel is here. I need this box. Like, give it to me. And then they went in the back room and my box was there. So I don't know what was going on with them, but yeah, that was a huge headache. But I'm so thankful that my friend was like very accommodating, and I felt so bad, but I had to pay out of pocket for the Uber cost to get him there and back as well because he doesn't have a car. Yeah, overall that was just not worth it. I guess if I stayed in a hotel, maybe that would be better because they have like a receptionist, but I know better next time not to use the shipping company. Okay, and last category, this is new as well, but we are talking about theft, and this is so sad that I have to talk about it, but yeah, it's the reality. So I personally didn't experience any theft in my booth. I feel like candles are pretty noticeable if they're gone. I only have one of each on my shelf, and then the air fresheners, I also just have one of each on the hook. And my display is pretty open, so when I stand there, I can see the entirety of my table. It's not like there's a blind spot where I can't see people taking stuff. At the end of each night, I was also very cautious, so I completely covered my table with a drape cloth with all the display items so that no one could just like pick it up and run. I also put all of my excess backstock every night back into my luggage under the table, just as like that extra deterrent for people if they actually really wanted to take my candles. So I was really lucky that I didn't have any theft, but unfortunately I heard a lot of theft from other artists, which is so saddening because we spend a lot of time and money just to get to this event, and then the fact that people are there to support artists and then they get stolen from is just pretty crazy. I literally heard somebody have their entire like clear pin stock, which they had like hundreds of pins behind their table, get stolen overnight. And that's just like wild. I couldn't believe I heard that. But yeah, this just goes to show that you can never really know. When you leave your stuff unattended, you are inherently taking that risk that someone could potentially steal that from you. And so that's unfortunate, but yeah, it's just a lesson learned to keep your stuff locked up or put away. So overall, would I go back to this event again? Da-da-da. I think overall, yes, this event was really busy for me, so I ended up selling out of the majority of my items. Pretty much the only things I had left were the stock that I wasn't able to sell Thursday and Friday because I didn't have my box with me. So if I think I had that box and the original date when the event started on Thursday, I might have sold out, which is crazy to say, but at the end, I'm still really happy with all of the earnings and everything that I was able to accomplish that weekend. I think it was really worth it for me to meet a lot of new people, customers wise, you know, just networking wise with other artists. I was able to meet like my internet friends in real life, which was so fun. I also got to meet a lot of subscribers as well, so this was a very fun event for me. In terms of socially, it was just really fun. I think logistics was a nightmare, and I was pretty exhausted by the end of it because they were pretty long hours and I was doing everything myself. I didn't have a helper, and I also got to make a trip out of it. I got to visit some of my university friends, some of my coworkers who moved, some of my Toronto friends who live there. So overall, it's fun to make a trip, meet some friends, and also earn a little bit as well. So I did rebook my table for 2026 if you are curious. And so that means I will be there next August, and hopefully I will see you guys there. But yeah, if you are a vendor or an attendee, or if you had anything that you wanted to add, please leave a comment down below. I'm always so curious to know what you guys think about this event. And I just want to say that this was my own personal experience. Of course, everyone has their own views about the event and their own lived experiences as well. But this is just my opinion on how the event went and what I experienced. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But yeah, I'll end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!